Welcome to the Danielle McInnes Podcast, a podcast for small businesses who are seeking great practical advice about marketing and sales. Danielle thinks like a customer. Even as a little kid, she always has shown deep empathy for others. Dan uses this customer insight to help small businesses create practical marketing strategies that work. Using this customer-centric approach and her 20 years experience in sales and marketing, Dan takes what is in your head, adds her expertise to create a system to assist you make better marketing decisions, attracts a regular stream of ideal customers, and creates a brand that your employees and customers will love. Hope you enjoy this podcast.
So welcome to the podcast for another week. Today I'm really excited about having Mark Garner from makethemclick.com.au on the show. And Mark's an expert in, getting websites and helping them make them clickable. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Danielle.
So thanks for coming on the show. I guess we should let others know that we sort of met and connected through LinkedIn, I think it was, and through a conversation about a website. and
I think it was your website.
Yeah, and just about maybe trying to get some feedback about making it more engaging. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about what you do and your business?
Well, conversion rate optimization or site optimization, but that's often a bit confusing for people. But basically, I make the websites work, make them more profitable, or help clients get more leads or more business from their website.
And so who are the customers that are coming to you? What are the problems that they generally have when they come to you with their website? Do they already have a website even?
Most of them already have a website, and it's either not working or if they're in the process of redesigning or rebuilding it because they haven't been happy with the results they've had or the developers they've had or how much it's going to cost them to rebuild it. Mm-hmm. And I usually get referred to by word of mouth by other people because one of the other things I do is tell people how to get the most from their website, how to build them cheaply. So instead of paying hundreds of thousands or even seven-figure sums for a website, and so look, there are all sorts of alternatives you can do to build a website, and it doesn't need to cost you a fortune. And these are some of the things you can do.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, when you meet with a client, and what are some of the problems that they're facing with their existing website in terms of being able to attract customers and then convert them?
The main problem they usually have is they're not getting enough business from the site. Mm-hmm. Usually they have a reasonable amount of traffic, they're just not converting it. And a quick look at the site will usually reveal why. I mean, one of the most common things I see is that there's no obvious call to action like a phone number. The phone number is buried somewhere below the fold in tiny print. So it's one of the first things I can say to them is make the phone number bigger, put it above the fold, probably in the banner. Mm-hmm. And, then people will know how to call you and get in touch with you. Mm-hmm. So that's a really simple thing, a really simple example of what can be done.
And you hear a lot of people talking about keywords and that they're really critical. Can you give us an insight from your perspective about keywords and search engine optimization?
Yeah, search engine optimization is not something I do, it's something I've done, but it's got way more complicated, and I prefer to give that to the professionals who spend all their time looking after search engine optimization. Mm-hmm. What I will say is for the clients that I have got, that organic search will account for anything like 25 to 30% of their traffic, and also it's usually high converting and high value traffic. So search engine optimization is a very worthwhile marketing strategy or technique, and I'd recommend everybody use a professional search engine optimization person to do that.
Yeah, and just for the newbies who wouldn't understand what organic search is in terms of optimizing that, can you give your definition on what what's included perhaps in some of the things that you can do organically to get people to your site?
Well, organically, it's all about the content you have on your site and making sure you have quality content and that the site's put together properly and built properly.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, that's an area which I'm very happy to give to the technical people who specialise in that. Because I'm focused more on the business aspects of the site or the marketing aspects or even the selling aspects of the site. Well, not even just the site, but the emails or any online advertising they might be doing, and looking at how can we make this better, how can we make it perform better, get you more leads or get you more sales or get you more registrations from this campaign.
So can you sort of walk us through perhaps a scenario that you might have had with an existing client in terms of, what sort of website did they have when you had them come on board? What did you recommend and how have you improved their sort of, make them click, if you like, performance for their site? Have you got some example you might be able to walk us through?
Yeah, a recent one was something very simple with the shopping cart. And your listeners may be aware that shopping cart abandonment is a big issue worldwide. So just by improving the shopping cart process, you can get a lot more revenue just by doing things right. And one of the first things we did with the client is we just looked at the wording on the button, whether it was add to cart or buy now. Their existing button had buy now, but a lot of the research that we've read said, putting add to cart was a less intimidating sort of phrase.
Okay.
So we did an A/B test on that, and we found that the add to cart had about a 3 times more effective conversion rate. That is, people were clicking on the add to cart button 3 times more than the buy now.
Oh, wow.
So that was a very simple thing. We implemented that, and in theory, that should bring them a whole lot more revenue over the year.
Yeah.
And with the same client, they also had a shopping cart which wasn't very intuitive as to where it was. Once someone had pressed the add to cart button, the page just reloaded, and there was a rather indistinct message saying the item had been added to the cart, but it didn't actually show you the cart. So what they then did is put a persistent shopping cart in the design on the page, so that once something was added to the cart, people would see the cart and know where to go to finish the transaction.
So it sounds. Sorry, so it sounds like what you're doing is having, a unique set of eyes across what they're currently doing and using the strategies and insights that you've gained to, to step up even what they already have and make some significant changes.
Yeah, I guess you'd call it a more hard-nosed marketing or business perspective, or look at the site, As I've said before, looking at what's working, what's not working, and from a marketing or selling perspective, what can we do on this page or in this email to make it work better? So some of the other things you can do is simplify the page design. Is what a lot of people fall into the trap of doing, is trying to cram so much onto a web page, so that they're in the belief that they've got to give the customer every opportunity to buy something. But that sort of counterproductive. It just confuses the customer. So by simplifying the page design and focusing either on the product or the registration process or whatever it is that you're trying to get the customer to do, it then becomes clear to the customer what they can do on the site, and it just streamlines the whole process.
I think another thing that I come across a lot is that websites generally seem to be talking about themselves and not about the problem that the customer might have.
Yeah, that's a classic problem, and it's not just related to online marketing. It's you find that in all sorts of business communications and PR and advertising and all of that. The client or the company wants to talk about themselves and what a great product they have and what great service they do and all of that, which is fine, but the customer isn't really interested in that. The customer wants to know, how your product or service is going to solve their problem, the classic what's in it for me.
Yeah.
So, and that's a case where, it's worthwhile using a good copywriter who understands how to write for customers or how to write for people and use, the language which a customer will respond to rather than sort of the corporate PR bland, so to speak, that we often get in company promotional messages.
Absolutely. The other question I wanted to ask you was, there seems to be this formulaic approach to internet marketing with this secret formula that's somewhere meant to be out there. And you often see websites with this long sales page with lots and lots of testimonials and lots of arrows directing them ultimately to either a cart or a PayPal, to deposit money for a particular solution. I just wondered what your thoughts were about that strategy and whether those sites actually work.
Again, that's a very traditional direct marketing approach which has been taken from the offline world and brought to the online world. Basically the old adage, the more you sell, the more you tell. I don't like those particular pages, but I also understand that they have been very effective. The main problem I have with them is they're so long, and I don't think a lot of customers or potential customers are going to take the time to read all of that, even if they want what the website's offering. They may just see all of that text and think, I'm not going to bother reading it, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's very important to, have your offer or unique value proposition very clearly stated up front, so when the customer sees it for the first time, they think, oh yeah, I know what this site's about, I know what they're offering, I'm interested in that, now I can read more.
Yeah.
So you can then guide the customer through the selling or the registration process. It's in effect you're trying to seduce them to, read more about your company and then do more do business with you.
Yeah, sure.
So as I say, that's a very old technique which they're doing with the long, sales letter. As I said, I don't like it, but I do realise that it is very effective. It's not effective on me. As soon as I see them, I go, yuck, and leave.
I think it's a bit Americanised. I don't know. I get the impression that it is, and that certainly Australian audience just sort of see through that and move straight on. Maybe that's just my impression, but I'm sure that they have their place. And the other point I wanted to ask you about was, so from what I'm hearing, really you want to get to that pain that you solve for your customer pretty early in that value proposition, front and centre, with a call to action that's going to be of value to them. What are some good call to actions that you've seen on sites that are working? Do any spring to mind?
Well, I guess call to actions are fairly simple when you come down to it. They're, either add to cart, buy now, or download this, or sign up for something. But what you have to do with those calls to action is basically support them with some sort of value and let the customer know what they're going to get when they do download.
Yeah.
Whatever it is they're downloading. So the call to actions are usually very simple. I guess what goes along with that is the unique value proposition or the unique selling proposition that you have on the page.
I'm just wondering if you've seen any new forms of it, because I think what I was seeing initially was sign up to my newsletter, or I think Americans call it e-zine, and that was, very common. Certainly, I was looking at this 5 years ago, and I think what that's almost morphed into is different call to actions, which could be, download, an e-book or download an MP3 file to, a calculation sheet, different forms, obviously still trying to position it as high-value informational content, but I think it's sort of morphing into the different mediums that are now available. I just wondered what your thoughts were on that and whether you're seeing that as well.
Not quite sure that I understood the question there, Danielle.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that you're right, they are sort of a simple call to action, but I think the mediums are changing so that, now that we've got many ways to digest content, I think that they're coming through in these call to actions. So, in previous years where it would have been just sign on for my newsletter, now it's, download this MP3 file or, use this calculation ROI sheet, or depending on the vertical, I think that the choices of, that touch point or that call to action, I think have got broader just because we're in a world where there's lots of other ways to communicate. So I think that's sort of I think that that's showing that people are moving with the times and that there's different calls to action that might be more meaningful depending on your audience.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. As you say, there's more ways to consume the content, whether you're going to, or engage with a company, whether you're going to engage with them via Facebook or Twitter or via a blog or RSS or email or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So in one sense, you do need all those different methods of that for people to engage with you.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think having more and more options is often confusing and stressful for people. It's like, which button do I push? How do I really want to engage with this customer and with this company? Is it via Facebook? Is it via Twitter? And that's where I guess you get back to the more traditional marketing disciplines of actually understanding your customer and doing some research and finding out, well, what is it that my customers actually, or how do my customers want to engage with me? Do they prefer Twitter? Do they prefer being contacted by Facebook? Or do they want the traditional email? Or do they just want to come to the website? So you have to do your research and have your analytics in place to measure how your customers are engaging with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also do things like online surveys, just ask them, how do you want to communicate with us? And there are all sorts of free or relatively free survey tools out there, like SurveyMonkey is one, and I'm sure there's plenty of others.
Yeah, I like Woofu, but there's lots of them. The last question I really wanted to leave you with, and you alluded to, and I'm not sure how much you can give away to us, but you said that there's lots of ways to create a website, and certainly I find this with my clients that, what is a website and what are the bits that make up a website in terms of the platform that you use, in terms of the design, in terms of the copywriting and the strategy. So there's lots of bits to it. But I think the bit that that I want to discuss is just the platform that they choose to use as a starting point. And you alluded to the fact that, that can often range in price. Are there any tips that you can give our listeners in terms of if they are at the second generation of their website and they're looking to change platforms, are there any tips that you can give them about what they should be thinking about?
There are lots of tips, and this is another thing which happens with clients or prospective clients. They say they want a new website or they want to rebuild their website, and they get some quotes, and they're sort of horrified with the some of the prices which come back.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the things that sort of more marketing-based consultants like ourselves can do, is say, well, look, you don't need these expensive options. You can use something like if you just want a content website where you want to engage with people and have some forums or whatnot, you can use something like a Ning or Social Go or even WordPress, which is basically free. You just have to have someone set it up for you. Or if you're just starting out with an e-commerce store, there are all sorts of fairly cheap monthly services you can use from Yahoo and a whole range of other people, which again can only cost you anywhere from $25, $50 or $100 a month, and that's probably enough to get most people started.
Mm-hmm.
But as you say, once you get to a second generation, it becomes a different ball game. It's sort of unfortunate that you don't know the limitations of whatever platform you use until you're committed to it and you've used it for a few months, and then you can find out all the things which you like about it or don't like, and then you can start looking for something better. But it's one of those learning processes you have to go through. And the other thing I'll say is, the technology changes so fast. It changes every year, or sometimes almost daily. So it's almost another unfortunate thing that whichever platform you choose is going to be outdated fairly soon anyway. So often you just have to bite the bullet and say, well, look, we'll go with this platform and we'll stick with it for a few years. So it's almost like that whole development cost becomes part of your marketing cost again. Mm-hmm. It's like you have to plan to sort of rebuild your site, in several years' time. Mm-hmm. And I guess that comes down to, again, understanding the value you're going to get from your website or your online presence. You need to be able to measure how effective your website is in some tangible terms, usually dollar terms, or how much value it's generating for the business. And once you've done that, then you can start to put aside, a budget for rebuilding and marketing the site. But unless you've actually sat down and worked out, the business case for the website and how much value it's actually generating for you, it's often hard to sort of contemplate if I build it, why am I going to have to build it again in a couple of years' time? It's just sort of money down the drain. But if you look at it from a marketing perspective and say, okay, well, that's basically a marketing cost for the next couple of years. Does that make sense?
Oh, look, perfect sense, Mark. And I think you make some really valid points in that, I often hear the remark, it's a really pretty site, but, does it actually do anything? So I think having that strategic hat on and actually, trying to program out your business over a period of years and how that fits into that overall budget is a good idea. I think the other thing that I come across is now, that portal, be it your website or blog, can be a central point of your marketing and sales, like a hub, in terms of referring people back to that, so that it can perform a lot of activities. And what I'm seeing enter the market are these players that have website software that link to customer relationship databases, to blogs, to social media, to performing perhaps a couple of marketing elements rather than being some flat pages that might have a call to action. And so that's interesting, because what that says to me is that maybe the thought around websites is changing, and maybe that people are thinking, like you said, how do I use my marketing or my website more strategically? So it's probably a timely conversation.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And historically, web development has been done by web development companies or graphic design companies who basically are experts in the technology and the design, but they don't really have that marketing or business perspective. So what I think a lot of companies need to do is, before they actually get a website built or go to a developer, they need to speak to basically an online strategist or an online business expert or marketing expert and say, okay, what is it that we want to achieve? How can we achieve that from the website? And what are the best ways of doing that? And then work up, a business case and a business brief, and then go to the developer and say, look, this is what we want the website to do. These are the business goals. You go ahead and, advise us on the technology and develop the site to deliver on these goals. I've done that for a number of clients, and when I give those briefs to the developer, she's thrilled because everything's spelled out for them. They know what they have to do, how it's going to be measured, and they can make any assumptions or decisions which will affect the marketing. They just have to go and build what's stated in the brief. But that's often a bit of a surprise for a lot of clients. Is, they've gone to a web developer and then they realise, we actually need to speak to a business consultant or a marketing consultant beforehand, before we even get it developed, which is obviously another cost and it takes more time. But as you said, it's a more strategic approach, and I think it's one which people are slowly waking up to, because they've had websites for a while now, and see how they're working or not working, and they're starting to ask the questions, how do we make it work better? And those questions often can't be answered by the developer, because that's not their expertise. What you want from a developer is good technical expertise, good development expertise, good creativity, but you don't expect them to give marketing advice or business advice. You go to someone who has that experience to get that sort of advice.
I think that's right, and I think the other thing that I'm finding is that I don't think they actually understand the process of building a website, that if you're going to these developers, they're going to make it look good, but you still got to populate it with content that makes sense. And that's and often you have to come out with the images, and all of the things that sit on the site are still often the responsibility of the client. And so if they delegate that off to somebody that isn't, like you were saying, a copywriter or somebody that's has expertise in that area, that the website can fall flat just from a pure content perspective as well. So I think that's an interesting point.
That's a good point. I think that's what a lot of people don't realise. It's another thing I say to prospective clients is that, if we do this for you, what you've got to understand is we're creating, a new business or a new marketing channel for you, and you'll have to resource it and fund it, because, if it takes off, it's going to be generating you more business, and you'll need someone to manage that.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people just think, well, we'll have a website, get it built, and then we'll just leave it alone, and, the money will roll in. Well, one out of 100 cases that might happen, but for most people, you have to work at it.
Yeah, I just wondered, how much time would you dedicate to updating your web or your, web presence weekly, Mark? Would you put some time into that every week or every month?
I'm trying to.
Yeah, it's
I'm getting to the stage where I'm going to pay someone else to do it.
Exactly, and I think that's you made a really good point in that it isn't a one-off activity. If it's going to be a sales marketing engine or a new way to generate business, that it has to be tweaked. And you mentioned A/B testing in terms of what's working, what's not. You need to look at the information, but I think also you need to have a content strategy and some things around this. So for some small business, that's way above what they're looking at in terms of the purpose of their website. But I think more and more people are finding that it is a great tool, that they are getting customers, and hopefully with their content, ideal customers to their site. So it's something worth investing in.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I was just done, a strategy for a new client, and when I finished it, I'm like, this is a fairly massive document. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And, as you know, the whole web environment has just exploded up, in the last 5 years. There's just so many different things to be on top of now. social media, pay-per-click, search engine optimization, blogging, the website itself, email marketing, all of that. It's just,
it's an integrated
there are so many different things. It can be overwhelming, as you say, and daunting for a new client. So that's one of the other things that you can do when you're meeting with them and say, well, look, where do we want to start first? How, as I said before, how do your clients usually engage with you? If it's with email, then let's start with an email campaign, and then once we've got that bedded down, then we can move on to something else like search engine optimization or social media.
Yeah, pick off the ones that are relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think unfortunately one of the things which happens a lot in the online space is there's always something new coming out, every week or every month or what have you. It's like the new flavour of the month, the new thing that you have to be on, such as social media. So everybody piles on that and it gets all the attention. But that might not be the best option for a client. They might just need a simple website, which they can do through WordPress or things like Ning, or they might just need email campaigns or whatever. So that's the value of having business or marketing strategists involved with you right at the start, so you can work those things out and say, well, look, let's not spend any money on pay-per-click or social media right now. We can do that later. Let's concentrate on what's going to give you the best result in the short term.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think we're at the end of our time together, but I just wanted to give the listeners some details about how they might make contact with you, Mark. So would the best contact be makethemclick.com.au if they wanted to make contact?
Yes, just go to the website, read the blog.
That'd be great. Well, thanks so much for your time, and I think you've given some great insights around websites and how to optimise them, and hopefully customers will be bashing down your door to get a really compelling website. So I really thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this podcast. For more great marketing tips, go to Dan's blog at www.daniellemcInnes.com and sign up for her marketing tips, or visit her website at www.mcinnesmarketing.com.au. Catch you next time.